I have to admit, the document we're diving into today, it actually kept me up last night.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
It's not often you read a macroeconomic research paper that feels like an actual horror story.
Yeah.
But this one, well, it hits different.
It really does. It's a ghost story from the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for everyone listening, we are looking at a macro memo from Citrini Research and Alap Shah. And what's wild is it was published back in February 2026, but it's written from the perspective of June 2028.
Right. It's a stress test.
Yeah.
It's a thought exercise.
And the premise is just terrifyingly simple. In this scenario, the U.S. unemployment rate is sitting at 10.2%. The S&P 500 has crashed nearly 38%.
Yeah.
And the global economy is in the middle of what they call a global intelligence crisis.
Which is such a heavy phrase.
It is. And just to set the stage right off the bat, this is not a prediction.
Right.
They aren't saying, sell everything and go buy a bunker. It's a scenario model.
Yeah.
They're asking, what happens if AI capabilities just accelerate way faster than the economy can adapt?
Yeah. They're modeling what they call the intelligence displacement spiral.
The intelligence displacement spiral.
Right. And the reason this keeps you up at night, the reason it's so chilling, is because it relies on this concept called reflexivity.
Okay, let's unpack that term before we get into the timeline, because reflexivity usually means a feedback loop, right? Like participants in a market affect the market, and then that affects the participants.
Yeah, but it's a bit more specific here. It's the idea that individual companies acting totally rationally, cutting costs to save money, can collectively create this deeply irrational, disastrous outcome.
Right.
Because if one company fires humans to use AI, their stock goes up. It's a smart move for them.
Sure.
But if every single company does it at the exact same time...
Consumer base collapses.
Exactly. Nobody has any money to actually buy the products those companies are making.
It's the tragedy of the commons, but for the entire economy.
Totally.
So let's walk through how this spiral actually starts.
Yeah.
Because according to this memo, the first domino falls way before 2028.
Oh, yeah. It starts much earlier.
It talks about phase one software eating itself.
Yeah.
And this kicks off in late 2025.
Yeah, it begins with this massive shift in how companies procure software. The memo points to a huge leap in what they call agentic coding tools.
Right. And we aren't talking about, ChatGPT writing a cute poem.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
We're talking about AI agents that can basically replicate the entire functionality of a $500,000 enterprise software suite.
In a few weeks.
In weeks, yes.
This is the make versus buy moment.
Precisely.
And there's this specific anecdote in the source about a procurement manager at a Fortune 500 company. And it felt so visceral to read.
It's the perfect example of how this starts. So picture a guy managing a really boring IT budget.
Okay.
He's got a renewal contract on his desk for some big sauce vendor. Normally, he just signs it, right? It's just what you do.
Yeah, the cost of doing business.
But this time, he calls the sales rep and says, look, I'm not signing this. I've got OpenAI's forward-deployed engineers sitting in my office right now. And he says, they can build a custom clone of your exact tool in-house for 10% of the cost.
But, that feels like a bluff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can they actually do that in late 2025?
See, that's the scary part. It actually doesn't matter if they can do it perfectly.
Oh.
The threat is credible enough, so the vendor panics, and they offer a 30% discount on the spot just to keep the contract.
And the procurement manager thinks he's a hero.
Exactly. He goes to his boss, says he saved the company millions, he gets a bonus.
But if everyone does that...
Revenue for the entire software industry collapses.
Right.
The long tail of saws, the smaller players, your Monday.coms, your Zapiers, they get crushed first.
Because they're the easiest to replicate.
Right. But then it hits the big guys, and the memo calls this the ServiceNow moment. They pin this around October 2026.
Okay, ServiceNow is a giant. They do enterprise workflow management. That is supposed to be a completely safe haven stock.
Until it isn't. So in this scenario, they completely miss their earnings print, and they announce massive layoffs.
And the reason why is the real kicker here.
Yeah. It's all about the business model. ServiceNow charges per seat.
Per human user.
Exactly. So if their customers are using AI to replace employees...
Oh, man. Then there are just fewer humans to sit in the seats.
You got it. A Fortune 500 company fires 15% of its staff to save money with AI, and they inadvertently cancel 15% of their ServiceNow licenses.
That is just a brutal feedback loop. The customers use AI to get efficient, which fundamentally destroys ServiceNow's revenue.
Yes.
So how does a company like ServiceNow react to that?
They do the only rational thing a corporation can do. They fire their own people to buy more AI compute, trying to protect their margins.
Which just feeds the spiral.
It accelerates it. Every single dollar saved on human headcount flows directly into more AI compute.
Which makes the next round of job cuts possible.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's the corporate world. But phase 2 of this scenario is where it really hits the rest of us. We're looking at 2027 now, and they call this friction goes to zero.
Right, the consumer economy gets totally rewritten here.
This is about the death of the lazy moat, which is a term I absolutely love because I am definitely guilty of it.
I think we all are.
The lazy moat is basically businesses relying on me being too tired to cancel a subscription or, compare prices across 5 different websites.
Precisely. Entire industries. I'm talking insurance renewals, travel booking, basic retail. They're built on human inertia.
Yeah.
We don't price match every single tube of toothpaste we buy. We don't switch our bank account to chase a 0.5% better interest rate because it's just a huge hassle.
But in 2027, I have an AI agent.
And your agent isn't lazy.
Right.
It runs 24/7. It doesn't care about brand loyalty. It doesn't care about a pretty app interface. If you tell it to order dinner, it checks DoorDash, Uber Eats, and 20 other local delivery platforms instantly.
And it just executes the transaction on whichever one has the absolute lowest fee.
Instantly. So DoorDash loses all its habitual users.
Because I'm not actually opening the app anymore. The agent is doing all the back-end work for me.
The habit is gone. The margins get arbitraged to zero almost overnight.
Wow.
But there is a much bigger casualty here than just food delivery apps. The memo highlights a massive payments crisis.
Right. Visa and MasterCard.
Yes.
Now, wait a minute. Visa and MasterCard are the plumbing of the global economy. I get that AI agents are smart, but they still have to actually pay for the things they're buying. So how do you bypass the credit card networks?
By avoiding the toll booth entirely. Look, Visa charges, what, 2 to 3% on every swipe?
Yeah.
Humans ignore it because it's baked into the retail price. We don't see it.
Right.
But an agent sees it as a glaring inefficiency. So the scenario suggests these agents start settling transactions using stablecoins.
Like crypto.
Yeah, on extremely fast, cheap networks like Solana or Ethereum Layer 2s.
See, I'm a little skeptical there.
Yeah.
My grandmother is not going to start using a crypto wallet to buy groceries.
Your grandmother won't, but her agent will. She won't even know it's happening. The agent just sees that paying the merchant directly via USDC is 2.9% cheaper than going through the Visa rail.
So it takes the cheaper path.
Automatic
So the stock prices of Visa and MasterCard just tank.
plummet. And think about banks like Capital One or American Express.
Yeah.
Their entire business model is basically collecting those swipe fees to fund rewards programs.
Their revenue engine just sputters out.
Gone. And this is the core theme of this phase. When friction disappears, the profit margins that literally lived inside that friction disappear too.
Man. Which brings us to phase 3. We're in mid-2027 now, the macro spiral. And this is where the memo introduces a concept called ghost GDP, which sounds really ominous.
It's a haunting idea, honestly. Ghost GDP is when you have this massive surge in productivity. You've got machines churning out millions of lines of code, marketing copy, legal briefs.
So the headline GDP numbers look fantastic.
On paper, the economy is booming, but that value never actually circulates back through the real economy.
Because a server farm doesn't go buy a pair of jeans.
Right. A GPU cluster doesn't go out to a steak dinner. It doesn't get a mortgage. It produces incredible value, but it doesn't consume anything.
And that triggers what they call the white-collar recession.
Yes.
And the distinction here is really important because usually, recessions hit the bottom of the income ladder first.
Exactly, the hourly workers.
But this one hits the top.
It cuts the head right off the snake. White-collar workers make up about 50% of total employment, but they drive 75% of all discretionary spending.
They're the ones buying the new Teslas, taking the vacations, doing the expensive kitchen renovations.
Right.
But the data in the scenario is weirdly lagging. Like, the memo says the spending didn't actually drop immediately when the layoffs started. Why is that?
2 things. Denial and savings. High earners have a buffer. If a senior software engineer or a corporate lawyer loses their job, they don't stop spending on day one.
Right. They dip into their savings.
They keep up appearances. They assume, hey, my resume is great. I'll just get another high-paying gig in a month or 2.
Until they realize those gigs just don't exist anymore. The agents took them all.
And that is when the spending falls off an absolute cliff. And that sudden cliff triggers the private credit bubble bursting.
Okay, private credit.
Mm.
This is one of those opaque corners of Wall Street that most people don't think about.
Highly opaque.
The memo calls it a daisy chain of correlated bets. Help us understand why this actually matters to a normal listener.
Think of it like this. Over the last few years, a ton of software companies were taken private by equity firms, and they took out massive, massive loans to do it.
Right.
Those loans were underwritten based on a metric called ARR, annual recurring revenue.
Because software subscriptions are basically guaranteed money.
Exactly. The lenders assumed that revenue was rock solid because, well, companies will always need software to run their business, right?
Right. Like Zendesk. The memo uses them as a specific case study. They do customer service software.
Right. Zendesk was taken private for over $10 billion.
Wow.
But then AI agents start handling customer service autonomously, and they do it better and cheaper.
So suddenly, nobody needs to buy Zendesk seats anymore.
And that guaranteed recurring revenue goes to zero fast. So Zendesk defaults on that massive loan.
Okay, so a private equity firm loses some money. Wall Street takes a haircut. Why is this a systemic crisis for the rest of us?
Because of who actually lent them the money. This isn't just a bunch of billionaires losing their bonus money. A huge chunk of the private credit market is funded by permanent capital.
Which means what exactly?
Life insurance annuities.
Wait, insurance companies?
Yes. Boring, safe, everyday insurance companies. They bought this private debt because they needed high yields to pay out your retirement.
That is terrifying.
It turns a Wall Street problem into a grandma's retirement problem overnight. If those software loans go bad, the asset backing the annuity literally evaporates.
It's a direct hit to Main Street's safety net.
A massive hit.
Okay, so we have the high earners losing jobs, the retirement funds taking a hit, and then we get to the final boss of this scenario.
Yeah.
Phase 4. We are now in June 2028, the housing market.
The $13 trillion question.
Now, we all know the 2008 playbook.
Sure.
Subprime loans, people with terrible credit, buying houses they couldn't afford with no money down. But the memo says this crisis is the exact inverse of 2008.
It is completely different. These are not subprime borrowers. In this 2028 scenario, the people defaulting on their mortgages have 780 FICO scores.
So excellent credit.
Perfect credit. They put 20% down. They followed absolutely every single rule.
So why are they defaulting?
Because their income has just been deleted.
Right.
You might have a flawless credit history and a beautiful $1.5 million home in Austin or Seattle or San Francisco.
Yeah.
But if your $250,000 product management job is replaced by an AI agent...
And the only work available is like driving an Uber or doing physical labor for $45,000 a year.
The math simply doesn't work. You cannot pay a tech salary mortgage on a gig economy wage.
You can burn through your savings for a while, right?
Yeah.
Stay technically current on your payments.
You can, but eventually you drown. You run out of cash. The memo predicts these massive spikes in delinquencies concentrated specifically in wealthy tech hubs.
And normally, this is exactly when the government steps in. They fire up the money printer. They do stimulus checks, bailouts.
Right.
But the source describes this as the government's dilemma. Why can't they just print their way out of this one?
Because the underlying tax base is broken. Look at how the U.S. government gets its money. It taxes labor.
Income tax, payroll tax.
Exactly. But in this scenario, the labor share of GDP drops from 64% down to 46%.
So the productivity is still happening. The AI agents and the robots are making tons of money.
Yeah.
But the government isn't capturing it.
Exactly. You can't easily tax a server farm sitting in North Dakota the exact same way you tax 10,000 high-income employees working in New York.
Right.
So tax revenue just plummets at the exact moment the demand for unemployment benefits and welfare skyrockets.
They mentioned something called the Transition Economy Act in the paper, which is basically a proposed tax on AI compute to fund a universal basic income for all these displaced workers.
Yeah, but in the scenario, it's stuck in political gridlock.
Of course it is.
And that leads to the social unrest. They talk about Occupy Silicon Valley.
Well,
People physically blockading the corporate offices of OpenAI and Anthropic because it becomes this intense, visible clash between the tiny group of people who own the intelligence and the massive group of displaced workers.
it is just an incredibly heavy scenario. It really is.
Very bleak.
But before we spiral completely into doom and gloom, we really need to look at the counter-argument presented in the source.
Definitely.
Because they actually include a perspective from a big tech employee they just call Peter.
Right. Peter is the skeptic in the room, and his point is completely valid. He's saying, hey, we might be severely overestimating the actual tech here.
Like maybe the AI code is still buggy.
Right. Maybe it's not secure enough for enterprise use. It might not be technically possible to fully replace a senior engineer with a bot by 2026.
So if the tech isn't actually ready, the whole spiral doesn't happen, right?
That's the trap.
How so?
Peter argues that the belief is enough to cause the economic damage.
Going back to that procurement manager we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Think about it. Even if the AI agent is only, say, 80% as good as the human, or even if it's kind of garbage right now,
Yeah.
the mere threat of it gives that manager the leverage to completely crush prices.
Right.
The deflationary pressure happens regardless of whether the AI is actually sentient or if it's just a really fancy autocomplete.
So the narrative itself destroys the profit margins, even if the tech isn't perfect yet.
Correct. Because the economy moves on expectations. If every major corporation expects human cognitive labor to be ruthless in 2 years, they're going to stop paying a premium for it today.
Wow. So kind of bringing this all home for you listening, we've walked through the software crash, the shift in consumer friction, ghost GDP, and this massive housing crisis in tech hubs. What is the overarching takeaway from all this?
It's what they call the intelligence premium unwind.
The intelligence premium unwind.
Right. For all of human history, being really smart was the ultimate economic edge.
Yeah.
If you could process complex information, synthesize data, and output complex thoughts, you commanded a very high wage. You had a moat.
And now intelligence itself is basically becoming a commodity.
It's becoming abundant. It's becoming cheap. And basic economics tells you when a historically scarce resource suddenly becomes abundant, its price collapses.
Wow.
We are essentially watching the repricing of cognitive labor in real time.
That is just a huge amount to process.
It is.
But I do want to remind everyone listening right now, today, the S&P is still sitting near all-time highs. Unemployment is low. This memo was a ghost story. Okay. It's a scenario to test our assumptions.
But it's a really useful one. It forces you to look at your own career, look at your own investment portfolio, and honestly ask yourself, is my value built on a friction that is about to go to zero?
Man. And the source actually leaves us with one final question, and honestly, it's the one I know I'm going to be thinking about all week. We have to ask a question that seemed completely absurd just 3 years ago. Are prime mortgages money good?
It just questions the entire bedrock of the banking system. Because if the human income backing that loan isn't safe.
Neither's the house.
Exactly.
Something serious to chew on. Well, we'll be back next time with another deep dive. Thanks for listening.